good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
In just a moment, our Morning Light panel will go behind the headlines.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Breast cancer is the most common cancer among women in the U.S., except for skin cancer. A doctor shares how loved ones can compassionately care for women affected. And a breast cancer survivor shares how her faith helped her through the recovery process.
But it is Tuesday, October 15th, and we're just, look at this, 21 days from Election Day. Every major poll and news network is saying the same thing. It all comes down to Pennsylvania. Thousands of volunteers from all over the country are going door to door. You've probably met them in cities and rural communities to identify undecided voters and get a commitment to vote by mail or in person. But what happens when this is all over? How are your families and churches and civic leaders preparing for the inevitable that 50% of Pennsylvanians will be celebrating and the other half mourning a devastating loss? What can we do to put Pennsylvania communities back together again after November 5th?
Yeah. November 5th, though, is days away, 21 days away, so
Yeah.
we still have time. You know, the most important thing is get out there and vote.
But do it right and don't lose relationships in the process.
Absolutely. For sure. Well, political messages generally center on fear of losing freedoms, relationships, income, and a host of other anxiety drivers. But one way to combat fear is gratitude. Flipping the script really on fear by remembering the many reasons to be thankful. A survey of some 2,000 Americans found that in an average day, a person says thank you at least 6 times.
Thank you. Thank you.
How can gratitude and thankfulness impact an election supercharged by messages of fear?
Gratitude in real life and in political life and all of life changes everything.
It does make a difference.
And 73 years ago, maybe you were here, a television love affair began when a real-life husband and wife began broadcasting the first of 6 seasons on CBS. The show, I Love Lucy. The couple, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, and their neighbors, remember them, Fred and Ethel, were the laugh track of post-war America. And they introduced us to a little Cuban music and culture along the way. But the reality for Desi and Lucy was, well, in many ways, less than ideal. For too many of us, our election's still kind of 1950s nostalgia. Are we aiming for a world, maybe a Mayberry world that never was? Does the black and white version of America keep us from confronting the very real and present problems of today? We'll take these questions to our Morning Light panel. Jeff Wakeen, thank you for coming back. You liked us so much that you came back for day 2. Cynthia Lyons, thanks for coming.
Sure.
Glad to have your voice on the panel. And Gordon Denlinger, longtime friend. We served in the legislature together, and you're doing well. Now Deputy Auditor General here in Pennsylvania, watching our money.
Great to be back. Thank you.
Making sure it's all spent wisely.
I'm trying to. Yes.
Thank you for doing that. Look, we're all fatigued. I think that is the word that most of the people that we talk to about the election say. Every commercial break, every time we turn on our phones, there's a message. We are inundated with messaging. But here's what I want to ask you this morning. Do you have a strategy in real life for what we do the day after with neighbors now who just put a sign up and you say, wait a second, I didn't know they were supporting, and there's tension when you roll out the garbage or go to the mailbox and you go, I don't want to talk until after the election. Cynthia, what's your strategy for maintaining relationships across the aisle or across the street?
Well, some of it's kindness. And having been on the side of a losing campaign, it's hard. And I also think the strategy has to be where we find our joy. And it's not in elections.
Wow.
And it's the good Lord above. And having had the other side of the story that we certainly didn't want, the following day is hard. No matter, and I knew some friends that didn't necessarily support me and don't necessarily think the way that my family does politically. But the next day is going to come.
Yeah.
Win or lose, the next day is going to come, and it's going to be kindness that helps us.
Gordon, did you find that to be the case? You've had spectacular, big wins, and you've had some defeats at the ballot box.
Indeed.
Which do you learn more from? And what do you learn about your neighbors who, as Cynthia said, maybe didn't support you?
Sure. Well, we're talking about as a campaigner, as a candidate. We learn way more from our defeats in life, and that's true, in all areas.
Yeah.
But I found in the depths of a defeat, which was again much more dramatic, God's grace became much more real to me, and friends who cared became much more real. And it was strange, you know, as a state rep running for a state senate seat in that case. Some folks avoided me. Some would dash around the end of grocery store aisles to avoid any kind of interaction. But there were, I can think of, 5 or 6 individuals who really came alongside me in that context. I will add to Cynthia's thought, which I thought was excellent, that the second great commandment, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. We have to live that out. And I think finding points of commonality, having a barbecue in the backyard or whatever to get everybody together will be very important after this election.
I like that idea, a barbecue. Plan the election bipartisan barbecue in your neighbor. I want to talk to you. You're a master storyteller. You work with small businesses. You help them tell their story. This notion of gratitude coming underneath, is this maybe a way, thinking about how do we live in gratitude and not completely in fear? You look at all the messaging and you see it's all fear. It's all don't buy the other guy's stuff, don't buy her stuff.
Yeah.
How could gratitude change it all?
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if we could only have the rules set up where we can only talk about what we're going to do and what's good, right? Gratitude, I think, comes into play in every day in our life. It's really around, assuming best intent in people, and being thankful for the opportunity, being thankful for the circumstances put in front of you. 1 Thessalonians, right? Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. And I find that to be a tough and a challenging one. How do you give thanks in a circumstance where there's such division and controversy and battle? But if we approach our neighbors in our business community and our employees and the people that are surrounding us with a mindset of best intent, I think then we can uncover areas where we can be thankful, we can be grateful for the circumstance that's in front of us.
Best intent. That's something, Gordon, in the legislature, that you cannot in debate impugn the motives of the other person. You can debate, right? I mean,
that's a rule of the floor. Absolutely right. And we would get called down when we crossed over that line. But you can challenge policies, but not the person's motives, so to speak. Which is, I think, a good principle in the House or Senate, where debate happens, but a good principle in life too. I think at the end of the day, across the aisle, we generally want many of the same outcomes. We just have different philosophies on how to get there. And those are the points of separation. But elections are final. It's the final poll that counts, and we're coming up on that. We will go through that season. The sun will come up the day after, Lord willing, and we'll move on. But it is a time of sorting it all out.
Gratitude, Cynthia, is probably bigger even than elections. I mean, it changes the whole way that you view your stuff, your family, diagnosis. I mean, people who are watching this morning are going through really hard stuff. Some of them are watching maybe on the app, and they're driving to Hershey Medical Center because they've got a surgery today. How has gratitude changed you?
Well, it helps you get through the day, in good times and in bad times. And I think that was what we had talked about. Being thankful in the dark times is really hard, but it's very important. It's don't we miss being thankful on the good days? And yet we're praying for grace and for goodness and for positivity on the days where we're on our knees. But we should always be thankful. We should always be asking for some grace and really hoping for the best and praying for the best in those situations for everybody. And shouldn't we be very grateful that we get a vote? Whether our vote is going to go the way that we want to or not, we get to vote.
Let's talk about Desi and Lucy, but first, before we do that, let's talk about you. You have a milestone today, and it's okay. Our archivist got a photo.
Yes, well.
How many years ago?
31.
31.
31 years ago.
Happy
today.
anniversary.
Oh, wow, yes.
The real Ricky and Desi.
Yes. Hard work.
Yeah, it is hard work. What's your best marriage tip for somebody that wants to do 31 years that's just starting out in marriage?
Communication. That's, I think, really big. And be in it for the long haul. There's going to be, some rough roads, and that's okay. Yeah. That's really okay. And know that we're not marrying ourselves. We're marrying a person that has really different perspectives sometimes, and it's okay to have tough conversations. and to be, I think it's really important to show the good times and the bad times to our kids, so that they're raised in a fashion that they're looking to have a great marriage themselves someday. So I'm really lucky. I'm really, really lucky and very, very blessed that
Well,
he
you and
picked
Dr.
me.
Lyons need to write that book sometime.
Yes. Well,
on marriage.
yes.
But look, we've just got a couple minutes left, but are we sometimes missing opportunities to help discuss real big challenging issues when we are thinking about, boy, I love the way it used to be. Boy, when Republicans were Republicans and when Democrats were Democrats and when we all used to get along. But nostalgia sometimes keeps us from confronting the real problems we're living in, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I would call it the proverbial head in the sand syndrome, right? We tend to want things to be the way they used to be, and the reality is that the only thing that's constant is change. And if we aren't willing to embrace that change and accept that change and look at what's my role now in that change to be a good steward, I think we're missing a big opportunity, because it opens the door and it invites the conversation with our family, with our friends and our business colleagues to dig a little deep inside what's really going on here, and so that we can debate for the sake of a deeper understanding for a better outcome.
We like Mayberry. You live in a place kind of like Mayberry, Lancaster County.
I do, yes.
So when you think about, Lancaster, below the surface, Lancaster County has a lot of problems. And sometimes it's difficult to be honest about them, like the Lucy and Desi story. You know, great on the outside, laughing on the outside, but on the inside, a lot of pain and hurt. 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that our communities have very real pressing issues that are not idealized. But you know, as we come onto the election, I'm very focused right now on Romans 13, 1 through 7, where in verse 1 we read that God elevates people into positions of authority. Ultimately, I think we have to trust that God has his plan, that he's working it out. And that when he puts people in, that means he removes them out as well. So that works both ways. But ultimately, our trust in a sovereign God, I think, can bring us to comfort, peace, and enable us to go out of our door, you know, in these challenging times.
Perfect way to end this conversation. Thank you all. Cynthia, happy anniversary to you and Stephen. Great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to our panel for joining us today. Coming up on Morning Light, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Knowledge and early detection saves lives. A doctor will share how he walks alongside patients through treatment following a diagnosis. We'll be right back.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, a time to raise awareness of a cancer that affects 1 in 8 women. Statistics show there will be more than 350,000 new cases of breast cancer this year. Because of early detection, there are more than 4 million breast cancer survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis can be very difficult to accept, especially for Christians. You may ask this question, where is God in this? But you can walk through a diagnosis with faith and dignity. Joining me now is Dr. Richard Rayner with Aspire Health Concepts. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Why is it so important to raise awareness?
Yeah, forewarned is forearmed, right? We all know that saying. And there's probably no place where it's truer than in serious illness. Breast cancer, we know, is a serious illness that can be devastating to anyone who has it. Fortunately, we live in a time, though, where early detection can mean that we can actually really improve outcomes in ways that we never dreamt that we possibly could before. But if we don't know, we can't do it.
And as far as treatment is concerned, treatment is much easier if it's detected early.
Yeah, so true. So I've been a doctor for 37 years, and I've seen mammograms go from really their infancy to what they are today, which are technologically amazing. And so they're very sensitive, so they can pick up things, and then that allows the physicians beyond that detection to target the therapy. So whether we're talking about radiation, surgery, or chemotherapy, or some combination of the both of all of those, then it allows us an opportunity to really get somebody better with the least amount of side effects. But again, the earlier we do that, then the easier that it is to target those therapies.
How do you walk a patient through this difficult journey when they first find out they have a diagnosis?
Yeah, it's really challenging. You know, we all, each of us has a certain response to the word cancer, right? So we may have known somebody or whatever, so it might strike real fear or anger maybe even. And so, it's really getting to know the patient or knowing the patient and then helping them with it. I have actually a little experience myself. I was diagnosed with bladder cancer right before the pandemic hit in 2020. And so I know what that's like to kind of hear that, oh, you might have this, waiting for the diagnosis, the official diagnosis, and then what are we going to do about it? So I'm able to have some empathy with it. But even my training as a family physician allows me to just kind of jump right in there with them. And of course, I'm not going to be doing the treatment, but support them. And of course, as a Christian, I want to bring comfort in a way that God would want me to do it. It can be, you know, a bit of a challenge, but we explore it and then go from there.
That's what I was going to say. How do you use your faith to make a difference for patients?
Yeah, so again, it is challenging because every patient brings a certain history, right? And so I will often, first of all, just, you know, weep with those who weep. Maybe not literally weep, but just kind of come alongside them, and then explore with them what is your faith history? Is there anything there? And is it something that you apply regularly and seriously, or is it something that, you know, is just kind of in the background? And then, you know, in the scriptures, we have a God who both just gives us strength, but also gives us comfort. And as one author put, we have a God who speaks, but we also have a God who hears. So if my patient doesn't know that, what an opportunity maybe for me to bring that to them. But I'd never want to trivialize it or you know, kind of, you know, take advantage. But look for opportunities like we would, you know, in everyday life to show how faith might be applied in this situation.
And how it may help you through this. And what type of response are you getting from patients who accept this?
Yeah, it's you know, again, it's variable because in addition to faith, we also have personalities and experiences and support systems that might be great and might be not. But either way, I try to reassure them I'm there for them. I'm there to help interpret what is overwhelming, and so just really caring for them, I think, is the main thing.
Yeah, and that is so very important. Yeah. And I can't imagine going through something like this without having God in your life, because there are so many uncertainties with this.
Yeah, there really is. And so our faith, if nothing else, gives us a context for suffering, right? I like to say suffering is the tuition that you pay for a character degree. And Christians can maybe grasp that a little bit better than others, but even still, it's true. It can build character in us in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
And coming up next on Morning Light, a Central Pennsylvania woman shares her journey with breast cancer and how she relies on her faith every step of the way. A Central Pennsylvania woman shares her journey with breast cancer. A diagnosis can shatter anyone's world. I sat down with Kathy Manbeck, and she explains how God kept her focused. Kathy, share your journey with me.
My journey started with my grandmother and mother, who are both now deceased from breast cancer. My younger sister has had it, and I was given a diagnosis for it in August of 2022. I went in for a regular mammogram, as I did every year, and they said there's a shadow on it. And we need to look further, let's do an ultrasound. So we did the ultrasound, and sure enough, there was something there. So it was time for a biopsy. The biopsy showed that would have that I had breast cancer stage 1, And now there were a lot of other things to think about.
What was your reaction?
Not full surprise because of how much cancer was in my family, but like it throws you off balance. Sort of fear tries to creep in there. You don't want that. And you just have a lot of decisions to make.
And how did God help you through this very difficult journey?
Well, His Word is always there for us. And that was very helpful to me. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind." And I went back to that and went over and over.
And how did that help you through these next steps?
God is always there. Sometimes we pull away, sometimes we say, "No problem, I can deal with this. This isn't as big as such and such." And we always need Him.
What steps did you take?
Well, you choose a breast surgeon, and the one I chose was someone I had met with earlier, a couple years earlier, to just discuss breast cancer and some of the questions I had after my mother was deceased. She was very easy to talk to, and I thought if I can get her, that would be great, and it turned out that I could. Following that was chemotherapy. Currently, I do hormone therapy, and so it's a journey. It's step by step. You can't take it all at once.
Well, you certainly look great. What is your message to viewers who may be going through something like this?
Be educated about breast cancer or whatever kind of cancer, especially if it's in your family. Stay informed as new things, there's always changes. There's new medicines, there's new treatments, and as things change, be informed about them. Then if you end up with a diagnosis like I did, everything's not brand new and you just feel like an avalanche just hit you. Early detection for cancer is another thing I wanted to mention, because I just felt that puts you in a much better place. Mine was discovered at stage 1. My mother, for reasons that she felt were valid, waited 8 months from the time she found a lump in her breast till she saw a physician. Her sister was dying of ovarian cancer, and she felt that was reason enough for her not to pursue anything with it. Her sister died 3 months after she found it, and she still waited 5 more months, which, I'm sorry, but it didn't give her as good of an outcome as she could have had. And by the time the physician saw her, she was stage 4.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing your journey.
Thank you, Deb.
And stay with us. We will be right back after the break. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, we are recognizing Pregnancy, Infant, and Child Loss Awareness Month. I will sit down with a couple who lost their daughter. They will share how their faith helped them through this unimaginable loss. Plus, we will introduce you to a nonprofit who walks alongside families who lost their infant by offering hope, empathy, and support. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
That's a good word, Deborah. Looking forward to the show tomorrow. Well, I love Lucy. My kids love Lucy. There was even a Halloween where my oldest daughter, Anna, convinced me to put on my best Ricky Ricardo outfit for Halloween. It was quite a look. But in the years since Lucy left us, we've learned a lot about the perfect TV family and their neighbors. There was addiction, there was abuse, there was alcoholism, and all kinds of dysfunction in the Ricardo family. In other words, Lucy and Ricky were real people. For those of us who consider ourselves followers of Jesus, it's a challenge sometime, isn't it, to take off the masks and leave our fake stories behind, the ones we'd rather live, to live honestly with the truth that without Jesus, there's not so much, not anything really good about us. When we live that way, everything changes. We can love the neighbor from the opposite political party who doesn't agree on the way we raise our kids or where we shop or go to church or buy our clothes, and we can do it all because of this. Jesus loves me, this I know. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching. God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow morning.